Rolling here. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Dalles Chamber Community Affairs, a space where we love to have different guests going from city to federal and organizations so that we can be more informed about what our community holds and the potential. So today our guest is Lane Magill, Sheriff of Wasco County, and he's going to give us some updates and such for that. So before we do that, I know he knows everybody, but let's do it anyway. It's good practice. We're going to introduce ourselves, and if you have something going on, go ahead and let us know. And they'll also use that chat box for any events coming up and such like that. So I'm going to start with Phil Brady, who is in my upper left corner.
Hello, Phil Brady, County Commissioner. I'm wrapping up my second year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Time flies.
Oh, he's old.
Yeah.
No, we got
That was before you came on, Corliss. Don't worry about it. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lisa. Didn't mean to steal your thunder there.
Too funny. Any updates, Phil?
Not right away, no.
Okay, perfect.
It's
Scott?
actually been a quiet week at the county. We're kind of,
That's
when we
good.
had a fifth, kind of, I'd say, 5 Wednesdays, so we end up not having commissioner meetings
Oh,
a couple
yeah.
weeks in a row, so it calms down.
You know what? My week has kind of been that way too. It's like, oh yeah, this is the extra bonus week. I don't have all those meetings. Except this one. So, all right, Scott McKay.
Good morning, everyone. Always good to see Lane. He does a fantastic job, and Lane, remember, and you probably heard this, quote before, but as Helen Hayes said, age doesn't matter unless you're a cheese or a fine wine. So
Perfect.
embrace your age. The best is yet to come. I really don't have anything to say except for, like I mentioned last week, the Ageless Awards are November 8th, Friday at the center at 2:00. So encourage everyone to come. Thank you.
Great. And just so you know, Scott, we've added that to the calendar and a few other things. So, Miss Corliss Marsh.
Good morning, everyone. Here's the old lady of the group. Well, I guess I have a couple exciting things. At the library, our new bookmobile has arrived, and you ought to come see it. It's the book wagon. It's really nice. And I get to ride it next Wednesday up to Maupin.
I was going to say, I thought it was going to Maupin next week.
Yeah, it's going to hit every place. Once a month, it's going to hit every place. And so it's even going to go to Antelope and Shaniko. So.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So that's the exciting thing at the library. And Habitat at the Restore, we had a fire. And so we're working on that right now. So, and Scott gave the Senior Center update of the Ageless Awards. So that's it.
All right.
We're going back to breakfast.
Okay, you go back to your breakfast, and thank you so much. All right, with that, the chamber just has a few things. We are going to try something brand new, and we're doing it at last minute because we thought, sometimes people don't come when you plan 6 months ahead. So let's just try it a week ahead. So next Wednesday from 12:30 to 1:30, we are going to go out and invade the grill, which is out at the golf course. And we're going to kind of have a meet and greet lunch networking, but we are having guest Susanna, and I don't have her last name in front of me. She is the career services PR for 5 counties, and Wasco's included it in there, is with WorkSource. And there are so many services for employers and job seekers, and people aren't taking advantage of this free service. And she does amazing work. You'll just fall in love with her. She just has so much passion for making sure that we can get that workforce into our employers. And so she even does pre-screening and help you figure out what you really need. How is that position written up? And then it helps recruit and get people to apply. So we're going to try this. Lunch is on your own at the grill. We're helping to support a local business while we get to meet and hear about some services that are available to both job seekers and employers. So that is next Wednesday from 12:30 to 1:30 out at the golf course. couldn't ask for a better view while you're having lunch. So that is what the chamber is doing. Of course, we are doing all kinds of other things, but a reminder that tomorrow morning at 8 till about 12:30 is the McHead Economic Development Symposium for 2024. There will be many different speakers. They're even doing a Main Street panel, so kind of interviewing businesses that are all in the downtowns of 3 different communities. And I will be moderating that panel. So that is going on tomorrow. And then, of course, tonight's trick or treating. So be cautious, drive slow, smile and wave at all the cutie patooties on the street, gathering candy. And there's activities at the city park, and there's an activity at one of the churches, and all of those different things. There's a ton going on tonight. So just be cautious and be smart and help people, as some of them have not gone into a downtown and realized that you have to wait for traffic. So to cross the crosswalk. And then also tomorrow night is a special ribbon cutting at 5:30 at Osprey Lane, right where Tierra de Lobos is. There's a brand new food truck, and it's going to be set up at Tierra's all the time. And it's Manny's Lonchera. And so a new business in town, they right now have a second truck at Underwood. And they've been there for a little bit and very successful. So they're opening up a second truck here and partnering with Tierra de Lobos in that efforts. So we're excited. So tomorrow night at 5:30 is the ribbon cutting, and then they're doing grand opening activities all weekend. So check that out. We love it when we have new businesses and we're supporting them and doing those things. So with that, I'm going to switch it right over to you, Lane. And I know with this group and you that we can ask questions during. We will not trip you up by doing that. And that we can do that for you.
Yeah, well, as always, thanks for having me. Wishing there was more people here, but it's just kind of one of those things, some days are when
Yeah.
are you, I guess the question was, I miss the days of having breakfast, so
Me too.
There's goods and bads.
I'd
We
love to have
had
breakfast
the-
again.
Yeah, we have access to more speakers because they can hop on the Zoom. And that's a little challenging for me at the restaurant to get people
Yeah.
on the screen or the little speaker that Bill used to use on the phone. So this allows that. The other thing that this allows is we actually record these, and then they're lifted
Oh.
up and put onto our YouTube. So anybody can go back and watch all of our community affairs and speakers and guests. And they actually do have a pretty good record of some views. And so
Oh, good. I didn't
Yeah.
realize that. So
yeah,
that's
so
awesome.
you're all recorded. No, I'm just kidding. We're going to cut the front.
I'm used to that. That's okay.
okay.
Welcome to public life. You're recorded
Yeah.
everywhere you go. So,
But we
well,
do
yeah, no,
record these. Yeah.
yeah, well, when we can meet again or something, or that'll be great too. But anyways, well, like I said, thanks for having me. Well, it's been busy. I can tell you that between, we're finishing up of course, our summer. I mean, while everybody's like, oh, that's done and over with, we're really just kind of finishing up at the sheriff's office, our summer busy period, with fires and just regular, work on top of it, so that's kind of coming to a close. We're starting to think about winter, and getting the tires changed on patrol cars, just the normal seasonal changes that we go through. So that's been going on. And then, of course, big projects that are happening. I'll just kind of go through a couple of those here in a second, and then, and I don't necessarily need to get into it too much, but of course, everybody knows there's the reelection part of this thing going on too. So, and I'll give a shout out to Lisa. I think I've done it a couple of different times, but I always like doing it. I appreciate the opportunity and the coordination, especially in the efforts on the candidate night out at the senior center twice in 1 year. So those are pretty hard to, it's kind of like hurting a bunch of cats, on a hot tin roof in the middle of July. She sat in the front row. Since this is being recorded, I can say that she sat in the front row, and I waved at her when I sat down to do my part, and she was sitting there with sweat dripping off of her and her eyes were crossed. She's like, oh my gosh, I only got so many of it. They only got 1 minute. Go. Anyway, no, I'm kidding. But yes, you did a great job. So you'd be proud of you and your team for doing that. So that was great. But
Thank you.
yeah, let's talk just a couple of things about big projects. So, and I know they're some of them actually are kind of in the election part of it, as far as just you know, what we're doing. You know, one of the big things that came up is, you know, we're behind the times in technology and some of those types of things. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that. We have two major projects that have been going on actually for about the last year and a half. So I'll talk. The first one is our radio project. The old radios that we have and the old radio system that we have is back 60 years old now, 1970 or maybe 50 years old. I don't know. It's 75, 77, somewhere in there. It's been a long time since they did it. I remember as a kid growing up, my dad was in law enforcement here. We had no South County radios. He had a base station that sat on the top of his refrigerator that was as big as the top of the refrigerator. It used crystals. I don't know. I'm sure some of us in this meeting will remember crystals and stuff, and had a 40-foot antenna on top of the house that he could barely skip it to the dispatchers here in the office just down the hall from me. So but it's been a very reliable system and stuff. It's actually still fairly reliable, but based on today's technology and making sure we've got officer deputy safety in there, you know, with new technologies and being able to reach different areas, we've actually partnered with the ODOT Oregon State Police Program. We were very successful in having that conversation with them. We will be the first public safety organization to join that system. It increases or improves our radio coverage, especially in South Wasco County, by about 25, almost 30% in some areas. Actually, some areas it's closer to 40 or 50%, kind of depending on where you're at, but it's a super reliable system. And then what we're going to do is, the exciting part about that is what we're going to do is we're going to take the current VHF system, and we'll use that as our backup system. But the cool part about that is we're going to let the road department use that system as their primary radio system, because they were having, you know, they have places they have a shop in Antelope and Wamick and Dufur, and of course the Mosier and the Dalles. But they had really poor radio coverage as well with just their little tiny system. They made it work, but we're like, well, why don't we transition that over to you guys? And then if something happens with the main system that we're on, we can always go to that as a backup. So it creates a lot of redundancy in our system, which is really, really good, especially up in the mountains. And there are still going to be some places that the VHF actually reaches better than the high-tech digital technology does, just because of where it's placed and just geography, I guess is the best way to say that. So we may have to use that for other incidents as well. So we're twofold, which is super exciting, and it's going to work really, really good for us. A lot of people say, well, what's that going to cost you? And we originally was going to cost us $6 million or so, or $5 million to build our own system out, and then the road department another $1 million. And we're like, okay, we can do that. You know, I can go up and scrape up about $5 or $6 million for actual radio stuff. That wasn't going to be hard, quite frankly. The catch is what does it take to operate and maintain that thing for the next 25 or 30 years? You have to start thinking that far ahead, of course. So what? Yeah.
We have Phil Brady with a question.
Oh, okay.
Well, finish up your cost.
Okay. Yeah. So when we did our radio study and all that sort of stuff, it was going to cost us $400,000 a year to run that program and the system. And like, oh my gosh. Well, that kind of priced us right out of the game, because I wasn't going to leave this place in a lurch, you know, after I retire or however things work out. So anyways, we partner with ODOT and OSP, like I said, and the amazing part about it is it's only going to cost us $33,000 a year. And they're going to maintain the system, the computers, all that sort of stuff. So that's a pretty exciting project. That will be coming. Hopefully we'll get all the radios installed and everything like that, because we have to have new radios and different things like that. Didn't go without not costing us anything. It's going to cost us about $400,000 in new equipment. But with our new budgeting process we've had over the last 4 years, we've been able to save that money and over time, and we're just going to pay cash for it. So we don't have to ask for any extra money or anything like that. We're going to work it out of our savings account. So go ahead, Phil.
Excuse me, gotta get my voice up this morning. The frequencies on it's a digital system, I understand. Is this a kind of a system that people with a scanner can listen in on, or is it going to be private?
People will still be able to listen in on on a scanner in some cases. Not all cases, it can be encrypted. So we'll have security channels or tactical channels that we'll be able to use that scanners won't be able to pick up or anything like that. So yeah, great question for sure. But yeah, no, it's people can still hear us talking on the radio from time to time. So let's see, the second project that we're working on, it's bigger project. Same budgetary requirements met, and paying cash for it as well. It's going to cost us totally about $750,000, but we're upgrading our computer-aided dispatching system up at 911, and that will tie into a new records management system. This is a multi-agency, multi-jurisdictional project, so it includes the sheriff's office. Of course, we run 911, so the 911 center, because it's part of 911, or that's the main one of the main focuses is on the CAD. The Dalles City Police is going to be a part of that project, as well as Mid-Columbia Fire and Rescue. And everybody's contributing their dollars out of that into the system. The current computer system that we have at dispatch is really, really outdated. That is one area of technology that changes extremely rapidly in our business. And that is not just here in Wasco County, that's state and nationwide, with computer-aided dispatch and software and tracking and all kinds of stuff. And I could probably spend the next 45 minutes of my time here telling you how computer-aided dispatch does, but it does tie back into new radio systems. So we're able to help deputies in real time know where they're at. It'll have GPS tracking, and deputies will actually be able to push buttons on the radios if they're in a position where they can't talk and we need to send emergency services to them. That'll give them coordinates and all kinds of cool stuff like that. But the same company that does our computer system at 911 also does our records management system here for my police sheriff's office. They don't do it for the city police, but what we wanted to do in that, and I think it's really important to note through partnerships and things like that, is we really wanted to be able to have the ability to exchange information back and forth from a public safety standpoint. Not that we can't do that now, because we run two separate record systems, but in our minds, when we started talking about it from an administrative and an operational standpoint, it's like, that causes a lot of issues through this technology thing. So you have to build what they call patches. So you have to have a patch to run. So the city police can pull records out of my system, and I have to have a patch to pull records out of their system, or even look at those systems, not even pull records out necessarily. It gets really, really complicated, really, really fast. And it takes a lot of time, energy, and effort. So how do you streamline that? Well, you come together, you collaborate, and you figure out a way to, make that technology work and work all together on one sheet of music, so to speak. So that project is in the final stages of contract. I guess how you say that, not negotiation, but it's kind of negotiation. So there's the contract for this, and the performance contract, and what's getting installed and all that stuff it's a huge document. And I will freely admit that I don't know a lot about it when I read it, because a lot of it's technology. So we've had to partner with not only law enforcement and the fire department, but our IT department has worked really, really well with us. They're a bunch of rock stars over there. So, and then they work with the Dalles City IT people and developing an entire system. And then we're tied into Mid-Columbia Fire and Rescue with that as well. While fire runs a little different record stuff, they are going to be similar in nature, and it'll be easy to transition and make that switch for McFur in particularly. So that project, because of where it's at right now, we hope to have everything signed and everything done probably right around the middle of December, the first of the year. And then our ultimate goal is to have full implementation by October of 25. Now people may say, well, that's a really long time. It's just a computer thing. You just plug it in. It's not that simple, because you have to remember there's data. There's a tremendous amount of data that we already have accumulated through old systems or the current system that we're in. And that data has to be figured out how we're going to move some of that data over into the new stuff. And moving data is a very, very tricky business. That was one of the biggest things that we ran into in this last transition over what, 13, I guess, no, it's been 13 years ago now, 14 years ago. That was one of the biggest issues we ran into, is transferring data from one system to another system. As a matter of fact, there's parts of this new system we're going to start completely over. We're not even going to move the data over. We're just going to archive that data, and we're just going to be able to go hunt it up if we really need it. And then we can manually move it over if we feel like that's needed. But moving data is a huge deal in this business, and a lot of people don't realize that. And it takes a tremendous amount of time. And when you add time to it, guess what? It costs a lot of money. So there's some efficiencies that we're looking at by not doing that. But there are some efficiencies that we're looking by doing that. So that's a really complex project. But we got a really good team that's working on it. So those are two of the biggest projects that we're working on right now from a county standpoint, as far as just internally and those types of things. So those are those. Phil, did you have another question?
Yeah, I'm thinking of, this is kind of crossover between both 9/11 and radios. Say we're out on a fire in South County, and the small rural fire districts, which are very important and very dedicated. How does
Absolutely.
9/11 connect with them, and also the radios connect with the rural fire districts?
Yeah, so they're still going to maintain their systems. So they still have their VHF systems, what we call Fire North and Fire South, and the ambulances run off of that too. So Womack Rural, Juniper Flat, Maupin, Dufur, Ty Valley, they actually have their own Fire South frequencies that they run off of, or frequency that they run off of. One of the advantages of that and having their own system is we're not going to be tying up two systems, right? So that's going to help a lot. One of the other things that we're working on through this radio system, and it's tied back into CAD, is what we call trunking. So it's actually a super cool technology, and how that integrates with the VHF and digital, that is way out of my wheelhouse. I can't tell you how that works. They told me a little bit, and I'm just going to plead ignorance because it's so hard to understand, but it has to do with computers, and so when we go out on an incident, we can actually create what they call a it's truncated, whatever. Basically what it is, they push a button on the console at dispatch, and it puts everybody on the same frequency, and I don't have to change it in my car. So I can say, I want to be patched or trunked or whatever the language is going to be with fire. They'll just push a button on my thing, and it automatically switches all the radios. So when I talk on my radio, I'm talking to fire, which is actually pretty cool. So it puts us all on one channel, all on for one incident and stuff like that. So that's some of the technology. Phil, don't ask me how to explain all that and how that works, but it will give us, it'll be much better for our South County partners, especially in the fire and ambulance services. And by the way, just so you know, we've actually developed a South County radio consolidation group. And so Womack and Ty Valley and Maupin, Dufur, and Mosier's involved in it, Antelope, Shantico, everybody's chipping $500 a year into that, and to help maintain that Fire South system. And so we're going to maintain that as far as just like the books and stuff like that through the sheriff's office. That's our contribution to the project and that group. So that's actually pretty good. So that'll put $3,000 or $4,000 a year in for long-term replacement and emergency repairs and things like that. So those are the two big ones internally that we're working on. I guess the other big one is it's always the elephant in the room, is a resolution center. And we've had a lot of roller coasters with this. I tell you, we started things out really, really great. And then of course it tapered off, and last spring, we kind of thought, well, we're in major limbo, and the project was in somewhat jeopardy, quite frankly. And then 2 months ago, the Oregon Health Authority came back and said, hey, we want to chip another $4.5 million into the project. Super exciting. However, the bad part about that is they put a bunch of strings on the 4.5 and said it could only be used for the secure residential treatment facility, nothing to do with drugs and alcohol or anything like that. And for those of you that don't know, the SRTF side of things is about a little over $10 million. So they were 5.9 short on that. And so they wanted us to use some of the 12.5 million that's already been allocated to the campus to finish that project out. And I along with Al Barton and Tyler Stone's been working on this as well. It's like, no, we can't do that. We have a greater need. While we need SRTF beds, and we understand the state does too, we have a bigger need for drug and alcohol right now because we didn't plan on having to fund SRTF out of that drug and alcohol money. So to make a really, really long story short, what we've done is we've kind of pivoted, and we've got plans now as we've got 12.5 million bucks. It looks like we may get 1.5 to $2 million out of Washington, D.C. on some earmark money. That hasn't come across the wires yet, but I know Merkley and Wyden and those guys were working on that through our commissioners and the team that went back and talked to them here a few months ago, which is pretty exciting. So if we've got, let's say we had another $1.5 million, that gets us to what? That's $14 million. So with that $14 million, our intention is to build a minimum 16-bed substance use disorder drug and alcohol inpatient drug and alcohol treatment facility. Right now, we can't do the SRTF, and this is going to get really complicated. And you can actually, I can have this conversation offline because it could take a long time. But during President Johnson's era in 1960 something, I don't know, I think it was 62 or 63, there was what they call the IMD rule. And don't ask me what that stands for, but basically what the IMD rule is it was and I completely agree with it in 1960, because it has to do with mass institutionalization of individuals that have mental illness. And anybody back in the 60s, Scott and I, we could say, you know what, Phil, you're mentally ill and stuff like that, and we're taking you to the state mental hospital. And they took you, and that was it. There was no courts, there was no civil rights, there was none of that stuff that ever happened in the 60s. And so, or even up until that point. And then they were just housing tens of thousands of individuals across our country, that quite frankly didn't need to be there at the time. So the IMD rule come out, so that did not happen. That broke that up. So when that happened, and over the course of time, is if you can't have drug and alcohol treatment next to mental health treatment. They can't be within 1,200 feet of each other, which is the dumbest rule ever right now, because that's how we think about stuff, is putting stuff on campuses and having one-stop shops and things like that. So because of the SRTF and the IMD rule, we can't put them together right now. So by us going on the SUD route, getting that done first, and working on the crisis side of our drug and alcohol addicted people in our communities in our region, that will give us time to sort the IMD rule out. And there is conversations in Washington, D.C. about it. However, I will say that Mr. Wyden does not want to change the IMD rule, which is very surprising to me. He says in a couple of his statements that he's willing to have the conversation, but there's a company called, or not a company, but there's an organization called American Mental Health something or other. And they're telling him, no, that's not a good idea. But on the other side, you look at it, Representative Blumenthal is like, yeah, it's super frustrating. We do have to change it. So to make a really long story short, I'm sitting on a couple of different organizational teams and work groups and stuff like that. We're going to try to come up with some ways to try to figure out how we can fix the IMD. I've got some ideas on how it can be fixed, and they're actually pretty simple. I completely support the mindset of whoever it is, whether it's Mr. Wyden, or us or whoever. I completely accept the fact and can support it that we don't need mass institutionalization of those that are mentally ill. With that being said, there are some individuals that do need to be placed at the Oregon State Hospital, in our particular case, that do have to be there. They're very much a risk to themselves and a risk to society. while that's unfortunate, that group of individuals is actually fairly small when you really think about it. And so we don't have to have this mass institutionalization mindset anymore based on treatment options, locations, different things like that. But we still have to have that as a tool in our toolbox for certain rare, I guess you'd call it, circumstances for individuals. I quite frankly think that a 16-bed facility, while it would be nice to see 20-bed facilities, that would be great. But if we could have a 16-bed SRTF, a 16-bed RTF, and put drug and alcohol on that same campus and just keep us at that, that would be awesome. Just eliminating that alone would be a tremendous asset to not only us in Oregon, but across the nation, because when you can't place people within 1,200 feet, especially in rural communities like ours, where property is at such a premium now, and even trying to find property is so hard, and then being spread apart. And I kind of think of it this way is when you got to take people across town to get them additional service, they can, or you send them across town to get additional services, you lose those people sometimes. You lose that connection to their process of getting them back in the community, or what we call community restoration. So I think in my mind, the campus model is a great model to have, because if you have somebody that's, let's say you have somebody, I just give an example, that is in a secure residential treatment facility. See, the ultimate goal is everybody, for those of us in the room that don't know, you have a class 1 facility. That's our Unity. That's an actual mental health hospital where they take care of your physical and your mental needs. Those are the individuals that are acute. They are very, very dangerous to themselves or others. They need a tremendous amount of stabilization, not only mental health wise, but physically as well. That class 1 facility, and then the SRTF, what we're talking about, is a class 2 facility. And then you have the residential treatment facility, which is class 3. And the ultimate goal is, if you have somebody that's in acute, which we've had individuals like that, just stepping them down from 1, 2, 3, and then back into the community, right? Well, there's no better model to do that than in a campus. So if you bring them into a class 1, while we won't have one of those right now, I'd love to have a class 1 facility on that property as well. That's a big lift, and it's going to take somebody with a lot more knowledge and stuff on how to do that, because it's an actual hospital, right? And we've got some preliminary conversations and plans about that when Dennis Knox was here, and what that might look like for a 16 to 20 bed class 1 facility here in the Gorge and on our property out on West 10th. But I won't get into that right now, because that's a different conversation altogether. But think about it this way. Let's say somebody comes in and they're in the SRTF side of things, and we've got an RTF there. Well, they're stabilized. The SRTF's good. Let's transition them to the RTF right there. We just walk them across the parking lot, which is super exciting, because then you've got all those services right there. And then the next step is let's say we need to take them out of SRTF or RTF and put them in the substance use disorder. We can do that. The other cool part about a campus model is, for us, is mobile crisis. We can put, the full intention is to put mobile crisis right on the same site. As a matter of fact, there would be an entire mobile crisis team that would be right there, and they could be deployed out of there at any time, or we could bring people to that location, and mobile crisis or the crisis response team could actually talk to that individual or individuals right there. And they can say, well, let's do it this way, or let's move this person here. Here's a safety plan. We can move this, I mean, it's this hub, like we talk about, that creates that stabilization of individuals that we can get them back into the community, under community restoration. So with that all being said, hopefully we're hoping this spring, we'll be able to potentially break ground on the SUD side of things. In the meantime, we're going to be working on the IMD stuff. I have told individuals that I am in touch with that I am more than happy to take the lead on that. If you want to see all about the IMD stuff, you can look it up and go from there. And there, I just was interviewed last week, and then the article came out yesterday by a gentleman at the Willamette Week. And my opinions weren't held back, because I'm pretty passionate about making sure that we get this fixed. So, and it's not only us that struggle with this. Klamath County's having issues with it. Benton County, I think, is having issues. Washington County's got a project that's having issues and stuff like that. So we really need to fix the IMD thing to create a better mental health system. I want to be very clear that a lot of people badmouth the Oregon Health Authority. And while I can agree with some of that their processes are just very antiquated, and it's an agency of 5,000 people, it's really, really difficult for them to kind of know what the right hand and the left hands are doing together. But I think if we can get this IMD rule fixed, that'll take a lot of pressure off OHA, because they're hamstrung. They got to follow the law just like everybody else does. So I want to be really clear that this is not an OHA thing. Yeah, some of their processes are a pain, but I mean, that's just government and big organizations in general. So I think that's important. So with that being said, if we can get some things moved back east, and if your senators and your representatives back there, send them an email and say, hey, call the sheriff, because he'll give you both barrels with what he thinks about IMD. Go ahead, Phil.
Thanks, Ella. Thank you so much for guiding this over a long time. A lot of time things we do in this feel like pushing clouds, like we just, we move and we get no traction with no resistance, and you just have to keep moving and keep trying. So thank you. Thank you. I want to give you something. If you don't have another topic, of kind of, since you started out saying it's the end of summer, just see if you could give us a recap for how things went with the River Patrol. We had a new boat this year, and how did that work out?
Yeah, no, that actually worked out pretty good. This was really our kind of, because of the shift and everything, like I've talked about, this was kind of our first full year doing it ourselves, and I think it worked out really good. We got some patrols out on the Columbia River on some heavier days and stuff like that, and then just at random we went out and did some patrols. Interestingly enough, there's not really a lot of boating traffic anymore like there used to be, and I don't know, I think it's just an expensive hobby and people, it's, I mean, you put gas in your boats and stuff like that. And it kind of, cyclical, so to speak, so, but we did have some contacts with individuals out on the Columbia River and stuff like that. We were able to focus a couple of different times out on Pine Hollow. That's one of our more popular boating areas in Wasco County. So we actually went out on the 4th of July weekend and spent a couple of days out there doing that, having some boating contacts and stuff. So yeah, it's good. It's evolving, I mean, it's a new program. I fully intend on next year being able to actually add to that, especially in the south part of the county, because one of the exciting things that I don't know if everybody here's heard about it, I made a Facebook post about it the other day, but January 1st, we will have a resident deputy permanent in South Wasco County, which is super exciting. We haven't had one of those in, gosh, almost 20 years. Deputy Veracruz is going to do that. And the reason I bring that up in the conversation about the boat is we're going to get him. He'll be trained on the boat. So we'll be able to place a boat down there, and he'll be able to utilize that with other deputies, for emergency responses as well as actual general patrols. So it's going to get better as time goes on. This is a program that's in its infancy. But yeah, and we're still working with Oregon State Police to do some annual training with them. That'll be next spring, of course. When we start into the season, we'll get a refresher course on boating safety and different things like that. So we're still working with them as our partners to keep that program moving forward. And speaking of that, we actually work with them. We work with Intertribe. We work with Clicktat County. We also work with Skamania County and Hood River counties in case our boat isn't available or we need assistance with our boat, on a something that may be a recovery or a boating accident or something like that. Our partners, our community partners, are really great people to work with. So I can call Chief Spino up at Intertribe and say, hey dude, I've had a boat crash. Can you send somebody up to help? And he'll send somebody, or Hood River, whoever that is, so yeah, no, it's a great program. It's coming out really, really good. We're saving a lot of money in my mind, and a lot of headache from the Marine Board. So.
Yep. Thank you. Good work. Does the boat go out on the Deschutes as well?
No, we don't deploy the boat on the Deschutes. We don't get enough training to put it on the Deschutes. We have never done that. We've done the initial part of the Deschutes, up to the first set of rapids and things like that. that is a river that you have got to be on all of the time to really know it and be experienced. With that being said, what we do is if we have to go up the Deschutes on a jet boat, we have a list of guides that have a tremendous amount of experience. We have one guide in particular that is here in the Dalles. And we can just call him up and say, hey, we got to get up to wherever it's at. Can you get us up there? And he's like, yep, absolutely. And this is a guy that's got almost 40 years of experience on the Deschutes River.
Is
Huh?
that Forrest?
No, that's he lives out Murray's Edition.
Okay.
Brad Staples.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Brad's a
Yep.
great guy. Yeah,
Yep.
he's been here. Yeah.
He
But
and
I mean, but yeah, and
he
I've
both
got
know how to navigate that river.
yeah, exactly. That is a very technical water, and you have literally got to spend a lot of time on it. As a matter of fact, even when it's floated, we'll put deputies on boats and rafts on different patrols if we need to, but we put them on with very, very experienced individuals that even raft it and drift boat it. It's a technical water. And like I said, you have got to be on that thing all the time on a regular basis because it's constantly moving and constantly shifting. So yeah. So yes, we can respond on the Deschutes. We just utilize other resources for that.
That's a good way to keep our crew safe, but also protect the public.
Yeah. And by the way, that whole contract, just so everybody knows, that's the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department contract. We've had that for about I think it's going on about 12 years now. It wasn't too long after I became the chief deputy. And so that covers the lower 95 miles of the Deschutes River. So basically it's from Pelton Dam all the way to the mouth.
Yeah.
Now the Jefferson County side of it is handled by, they have a marine deputy that's up there and does boater inspections and checks right there at the Warm Springs thing. And we connect with him ever so often. Most of our work is from Trout Creek all the way to the mouth. So it's been a great partnership with Parks and Rec and BLM and the Deschutes River Managers Group. I sat on that group as well. And it's been a great partnership as far as making sure that we're doing enforcement, and that enforcement on that contract is not just on the water. Of course, that enforcement goes to campfires and criminal activity and different things like that. So
I'll go down the list of other tools you've got. We also got a new, what do you call it? Off-road vehicle.
Yep. Yeah. That's for our search and rescue. Yep. Absolutely. We got that this last summer and we got a side-by-side. I made a Facebook post on that. You can see it's fancy reddish orange color thing. It comes with tracks and all kinds of stuff. That come out of Title III funding. That's the funding that we get from the U.S. government because we have national forest in Wasco County, and we get an allocation from the federal government every year for Title III money for search and rescue operations inside the national forest. So we can use that for equipment. We can use it for training. We can use it for, major incidents like fires and stuff like that. We can use Title III for some of that as well. And speaking of that, thank you, Phil, for reminding me of that. But we do have a long-standing 25, 30-plus year contract with the U.S. Forest Service to patrol the Mount Hood National Forest. That's continuing. And matter of fact, they've upped the funding for that. They give us $75,000 more for that over the next 3 years, plus our regularly contracted rate every year. So that's a great thing. So yeah, we've got that. Another thing on the equipment side of it, gosh, I'm glad you said that. Now my brain's working overtime here. But we did get a grant for a new drone. It's a $25,000 grant, I think, or $20,000 grant we put in for a drone for search and rescue and law enforcement in general. We've actually looked at some of that equipment. We're going to get it from a company, it looks like, down in Colorado. It's an American-made piece of equipment because we can't use foreign equipment due to all the internet stuff and things like that. The federal government's inserted themselves, rightfully so, as far as DJI products and things like that. So, but that we're hoping we'll get some of that stuff going probably by this winter sometime or early next spring. That's going to happen. We're kind of waiting for some of the paperwork to get done. It's typical. I think we're pushing clouds on that too, Phil, like you said. So, and then the other thing that we got too on a grant is we actually got a robot for any kind of emergency deployment, for situations where somebody might be barricaded or something like that, we actually got a robot, which is kind of cool. And we got that on a grant as well. So that's going to be kind of cool. That'll go with our NORTAC team. That's our regional SWAT team. So if we need to, you know, go to Hood River, or we need to go somewhere where there's maybe one of our schools, unfortunately, or a business or whatever, we've got a remote control robot that can go in and do, you know, investigate the scene and find the bad guys and do different things like that, you know, and we can determine what kind of action we need to do. So it gives us a really great layer of safety as well as investigative techniques and stuff with both those pieces of technology. So yeah, thanks for that reminder, Phil. I completely forgot about those.
I was going to ask about drone drone too. Could you outline what's the policy for using the drones?
Yeah. So statutorily, there are some things that we can and we can't do. So I can't just take the drone and go out and say, you know what, I'm going to go see what's going on in somebody's backyard just to see what's going on in somebody's backyard. You can't do that. If you got a crime scene or you want to do surveillance on somebody or something like that, you have to have a search warrant, just like anything else. So, because that's the way the rules work. On the other hand, there's other things that automatically give us the ability to deploy it in emergency situations. So if you think of fires, man-made fires, natural disasters, all that sort of stuff. But one of the biggest tools we're going to be able to use it for is search and rescue. It'll come with infrared stuff and FLIR and all that fancy stuff. So let's say we get a situation. I'll give you a really good example here. About a year and a half, and it's probably been close to 2 years ago, we had a kid that got out of a school area that was severely autistic, and we deployed search and rescue, and we deployed our canine for tracking. And fortunately, I happened to be in the right place at the right time, and found this young gentleman. I think he was 11 years old at the time, just walking down the street and stuff. And it's like, hey, very autistic, but that will be one of those great assets to have, is like, hey, deploy this drone and see if we can find this individual, you know, on a quicker basis. Or in the mountains, somebody gets lost, we can send the drone out and see if we can find him that way and stuff. So those are the emergency type situations where there's automatic deployment. Now there's rules with that, you know, like height rules and training rules and those types of things that we have to follow with the FAA and different things like that. And that comes with part of our training. And by the way, we will have 4 certified drone pilots, FCC certified drone pilots, when this thing's up and running. So that'll be great for, you know, anybody can use. Kind of like our Marine program, we're going to get a bunch of people trained up so anybody can deploy it, you know, as an asset.
So we got the Air Force, the Navy, and you got your ground sheriff.
Yeah, I don't know that if we rise to the level of the United States Marine Corps, but you know.
That's good.
Yeah. Those are great questions, because there's so many things that happen. You just, oh yeah, that's right, we did do that, you know. So let's see. Trying to think of anything else through, like, we talked about 911. Oh, I know one thing that and this has been in the campaign a lot, is, you know, I've dissolved the Mint team and the Mint team's no longer in existence and stuff like that. Well, first, that's not actually true. Yes, it's been on a pretty extensive hiatus due to Measure 110 and was part of it. Staffing was really what drove that conversation for having somebody on our narcotics team. About 6 months ago, or even a year ago, we started having some pretty hard conversations internally about whether we did want to continue that or not, because of the 2 major things that we talked about, the Measure 110 as well as just the staffing part of it. Measure 110's fixed a little bit. It's not as much as we want it to be fixed, I don't think. There's some work that we need to do on that, but we've got to do our part of it to make it better. But the other part of it, from the staffing part of it, that ebbs and flows, and we're in a position now where we're only going to be, looks like we were going to be fully staffed in the next 60 days. However, we had an individual that chose to not take our organizational offer and went to another one. So we're going to be holding pretty much even. here for a little bit. We'll have another person potentially coming on in February that's coming from out of state. But what we got to looking at about 6 months or a year ago now is what can we do to make it much more effective from, a public safety standpoint? And it's not all about drugs anymore. What we're finding a lot, don't misunderstand me. Drugs are an issue. I mean, we're losing people on our streets every day, to fentanyl overdoses and different things like that. But that's just one aspect of investigations, and narcotics. Yeah, while we want to take them off the street, and that is a priority of ours when we have the opportunity to investigate those types of things, we do that. However, when you start looking at the spider web and the connection of drugs back to just different stuff, everything from internet crimes to street crimes to person crimes to property crimes and stuff like that. So what we got to talking about here, and we're going to get this going again, is a conversation of changing it from the Mint team using the same framework, but creating a street crimes team. And it'll still be regional, but what it'll do is it'll put our thought is what we can do is we will put investigators on it from multiple jurisdictions, but yet we'll be able to build bigger and better, stronger cases through different things. So we may actually have a major burglary case that happens in Sherman County, and we deploy that team to Sherman County to investigate that. And then we build that case out that may connect to different counties around the state, around the nation, whatever that is, that may be tied back to drugs, back to Wasco County or something. So it's more of it's a more rounded organization, not organization, but it's a more rounded team for doing more things. I can't get my words out on that. It gives us more capabilities and stuff. I mean, you think about internet crimes by themselves tied back to just narcotics and how that's connected. I could actually hire somebody around here full time just to do internet crimes. No drugs at all, just internet crimes. But when you look at internet crimes and how they connect to drug crimes, how they connect to person crimes, property crimes, we get, fraud crimes all the time, well, some of that's tied back to the drug enterprises. Is there ways that we can maybe try to, build that through that street crimes team, get back into that and bust some of that stuff up and make arrests out of that? Yeah, that would be the hope. But I think looking at it from a bigger picture and not just on drugs, looking at it as a street crimes team and making it bigger and broader, actually, in my mind, would improve what we're doing, not only locally, but regionally.
Sheriff, I'm taking Lisa's job here.
That's all right.
But are you implying that these crimes are organized? It reminds me of when I was in Caracas and asked a friend, well, what's the crime like in this part of Caracas? She said, oh, it's very well organized. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Organized crime is still a big thing. I mean, and I'm not talking just organized crime on a drug side of things. I mean, there's some stuff now that we've been into some meetings with on organized retail crime. It's a big thing in Oregon, and it's all tied back to the drug stuff. I mean, there's organized crime in just different, areas, but it's just this big spider web of stuff. So,
and putting together the street crimes unit is looking at it from that network, so you can, so you're not just looking at one piece of it, you can pull in all the parts.
Yeah. Yeah. It's more of it would be more of a multidisciplinary, type thing, where we're like, and, there may not be a drug connection to that incident. That example I gave you over in Sherman County, and maybe, it's a major burglary, and we put that together, and that burglary is tied to 5 other ones in 4 other counties. That street crimes team would investigate that, as far as, running those rabbit trails out and everything like that. And by the way, just so everybody knows, that just because we go to that street crimes team does not change the fact that we still have a major crimes team. And that major crimes team is still in effect. That's a multi-jurisdictional, multi-agency organization that we actually work with. So if we have a major crime like officer-involved shootings, homicides, those types of things, major crimes gets involved in that. That's a totally different team than what we're doing. They're reaction based on major crimes teams, where a street crimes team, that's a daily operational thing. Sorry, Lisa, am I running out of time?
No, you have 3 to 4 minutes, and that's it. Then I'm gonna cut you off.
Okay.
And
Do
Lane,
you have a question? Go ahead.
yeah, Lane, just compliment of that. A friend of mine happened to be at the Wasco County Fair during the storm, and she said that the sheriff's department was incredible and did really a great job down there during that storm they had.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I know that was kind of crazy down there for sure. But yeah, it's amazing how your training and everything just comes into play on those major incidents. It's kind of like it was, and unfortunately, however you want to look at it, or fortunately, is we're so good at what we do with emergency response, especially around fires and incident management and all that sort of stuff. I think we just kind of went into those roles during that incident. We did have an after action report on that. There's some areas of improvement. We're going to help out on the fairgrounds as far as safety goes and security and different things like that. But yeah, thank you for the kind words, Mr. McKay. That's great to hear that. And, I think it worked out really, really well. And you know what? Like I say, everything's a learning experience. We'll get better if hopefully we don't have to deal with it again. But yeah, so.
And my last compliment is that you have a fantastic daughter. Kayla does a great job at the bank and also with the Kiwanis Club, and we really appreciate her.
Yeah, she's pretty amazing with the kids, and yeah, so she does good there. So yeah, I don't know what else to talk about. You can read that article in the Willamette Week. I'm not going to talk
Yeah.
about the award stuff. You guys can figure that out.
Sounds great. So I'll give you 1 minute back to your day because that's all. I
Thank
got
you.
left. So thank you again, Lane. I appreciate
Yep.
you just being
Thanks for the
here.
invitation.
Yeah, we love the candidness. We do. We love that we can just sit here and have a conversation with you. It's part of our county. We're part of that community. So how else do we raise it up than having those communications and conversations together?
I
Perfect.
agree with you though, Lane. I miss having breakfast together. Yeah.
Sounds like you guys need to schedule a breakfast.
Yeah, get on it,
Right
Lisa,
now,
would
we're
you?
going to keep this on Zoom. This is the one meeting we did because I can still get a hold of all my people. I put the links in the chat. One is for just the legislation, the candidate forum recordings. But the other one, community affairs, includes all of our community affairs that we've uploaded, along with the legislation candidate forums that we've done in the past, including the most recent. So they're all there for you.
How many years do they go back? Can we go back to our first conversation, see how much we've aged? And
Really, Phil? Wait a second.
Only since I believe probably right out of COVID, because we kind of stopped it during COVID. So when we picked it up at that point, that's when we went to Zoom.
And I can tell you, Lisa had hair then and I still didn't.
So, anyway, thank you all so much for being here. Make sure you watch out for those little kiddos tonight. They're excited. They want to get those buckets full of candy. So just be cautious. And everyone have a great weekend because we're